that one of the most important studies that had ever been done, and still one of the most important ever studies on psilocybin and spirituality, was called the Good Friday Experiment.
Mm-hmm.
And it was done by Walter Pankey, who was a minister and a doctor, and he was a PhD student of Timothy Leary's, and he was at Harvard. And he was very interested in studying whether psilocybin in religiously inclined people in a religious setting could produce a mystical experience, a religious experience. So what he did was, Walter Pankey did this with Timothy Leary. They did this experiment, which I'll explain a bit more, but and then after that, Walter Pankey went to Johns Hopkins and worked with Stan Groff on the LSD research.
Yeah, please.
And then, so there was, Walter Pankey was, he spent a year before the study trying to, what is a mystical experience?
Trying to define it.
Trying to define it.
Much easier. Define it for science.
Yeah, in a scientific way. Now, the research that's still being done today with psilocybin, with LSD, the Mystical Experience Questionnaire, it's based almost exactly on the one that Walter Pankey made for 1962 for the Good Friday Experiment. And I will just add that we have the minister's sermon.
Really?
On our website. Now, the minister is very important because his name was Howard Thurman. He was an African-American minister, incredible, dynamic speaker. But he was at Boston University, the Marsh Chapel. He was the minister at the Marsh Chapel. And he had been in India studying with Gandhi. And he had learned about nonviolent resistance from Gandhi. Then he's now at Boston University, and who should come to be a PhD student but Martin Luther King? And Martin Luther King gets his PhD from Boston University, and his mentor was Howard Thurman. So Howard Thurman is introducing the idea from Gandhi of nonviolent resistance into the U.S. civil rights movement. And while Howard Thurman was interested in the political implications of the mystical experience, and also how do you generate a mystical experience? So Walter Pankey is looking around, where can he do this experiment? And he knows about Howard Thurman. And he talks to Reverend Howard Thurman, and Howard Thurman says, yes, you can. In a Good Friday experiment, we have a basement chapel. You can have your experiment, and you can give people psilocybin or a placebo while I'm doing my Good Friday service. And this guy is an incredible orator. It's just amazing. So the way the experiment was conducted, it was people who were religiously inclined. They were from Andover Newton Theological Seminary. And they were wanting to be priests. They were all in this process, trained to be priests. And it was done as a Harvard PhD, but in a Boston University facility. So Timothy Leary was already, people were being nervous a little bit about psychedelics, but he figured no one school was really responsible. He had all these different...
Spread it out, so they might be a little nervous, but then somebody else is doing. There's always somebody else to blame.
Yeah. At the last minute, the people at Harvard tried to deny him the psilocybin, and he got it from some other researcher that he had given it to. All right, so the idea is that you take 20 divinity students and 10 experimenters, part of the experimental team. Now, this was Houston Smith, whose world religions is renowned for studying world religions. Houston Smith. Walter Houston Clark was expert in studying religious and mystical experiences. Leary, Ramdas, Metzner, they had the incredible group of these 10 people and that were going to be part of the experimental team. And so they divided all of these 20 students, 20 divinity students, into groups of 4. So they had 5 groups of 4. And in this group of 4, they also had 2 experimenters. And so of the group of 4 divinity students, they'd all get a pill. Half would be the psilocybin, half would be the placebo. And of the experimenters, of the 2 that are there, one will get the psilocybin, one will get the placebo.
Yeah.
So they're basically saying that the experimenters are sort of with the people being experimented on. They're willing to take the psilocybin. Everybody's willing to have this experience with mushrooms during Good Friday. And it's like 3.5, 4-hour service. All right. And so, yeah, if you go to Good Friday Experiment on the maps.org website, I got it from Walter Pankey's widow, was the tape of the service.
Really?
It's so
We'll
profound.
have to make sure we have a link to
and people at Harvard Divinity School have over the years sort of tried to do their own little Good Friday experiment. In this.
Something again, like the Good Friday experiment is beyond amazing, and hearing the details of that. The other thing that's significant that people don't realize, and I didn't even know until recently, it was 420.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So 420 is huge in the cannabis world, and that might even be like one of the first times 420 was actually ever a thing.
Yeah, but I don't think people thought that.
No, people didn't think. Nobody. Nobody
Yeah.
connected the dots. I'm just saying where we are today.
Yeah.
So, and this is really significant because of the event that we have coming up. So, the church at this point, we're 125,000 people, so we can't do regular services. We have a yearly event that happens on Easter. And this Easter happens to be 420. So our 2-day conference is 419 Bicycle Day and 420 Easter, which is obviously 420 and Easter, but also the anniversary of the Marsh Chapel experiment.
Yes.
So, I mean, like, make this stuff up. We didn't plan this out. We're like, hey, universe, schedule all these things at the same time so we can have our conference. But, it's really interesting how the, like, synergies around psychedelics happen.